Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll move on to the resolution declaring the election results.
Resolution number 2021-041, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa declaring the results of the April 6, 2021 general municipal election.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. I'm here to report on Resolution 2021-041. On April 6, the state of Missouri conducted a general municipal election. The City of Nixa had 3 positions on the ballot: the municipal court judge and 2 open city council seats. The Christian County Clerk has provided to the city the official election certification for the April 6 election. The city's charter requires the council to declare the results of municipal elections once the city obtains a certification from the county clerk. This declaration is required to occur at the next available regular council meeting once we obtain this certification. The charter also requires that those individuals receiving the most votes from that election are to be inducted into office at that time. Resolution 2021-041, as presented for council's consideration tonight, would evidence the council's declaration of the election results as certified by the county clerk. Because this action is mandated by the charter, staff would recommend approval of this action, and I'm available to answer any questions that the council may have.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Nick. We will open up public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to the election, you can do so at this time. I don't remember ever doing that in the past, but sounds good. We will close the public hearing. Need a motion to approve the resolution.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to the unseating of our current members before we move on to the seating of our new members. Oh, Mr. Barker is here. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Barker for his term here with us on City Council. He's been a great voice for personal freedom, I think, on this council, and a strong voice for those that are at risk in our community. I think you've done a wonderful job of representing those members of District 2, and congratulations on your term, and congratulations on your term ending. We'll present you with your honorary clock saying that your time has run out. Move on.
All right. Thank you.
Pictures there.
Sure.
You can take care of everything.
You're good. Thank you.
I didn't take yours out of the box, so I was going to give the same one away. Sit back down.
I can sit back down?
Sit back down, and then
I thought I was just kicked out.
we'll go down. We'll go down and take a picture.
Okay.
And we didn't plan this very well, but it's all right. It's the way it goes sometimes. And Mr. Perryman. Mr. Perryman has been a great leader on this council as Mayor Pro Tem, and a great leader throughout this community, and a good friend to me as well. I appreciate all the time you spent not only on council, but also in the community, and especially with our Public Works Department and all the great work that you've done there. And you'll be sorely missed on this council.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You get extra batteries and stuff.
Thank you.
We'll do a picture and then get you guys all.
All right.
the extra spots. You get everything. Move along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker, Mr. Perryman. We'll move on to the induction of our new council members.
Mayor and council, this evening, we'll be swearing in the winner for council, member District 1, Ms. Amy Hookstrat. Amy, if you'd like to come up and sign your document, and then I'll swear you in. How about if I stood in front of that and she's talking? Easiest? And you'll face me. Okay. What I need you to do, I just need you to raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Amy Hookstrat,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the City of Nixa,
and the ordinances of the City of Nixa,
and that I will faithfully demean myself
and that I will faithfully demean myself
in the office of City Council Member District 1,
in the office of City Council Member District 1,
for which I was elected
for which I was elected
on the 6th day
on the 6th day
of April 2021.
of April 2021.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right there.
All right, let me go grab my things.
Mayor and council, Mr. Sean Lucas was the winner for District 2. And if you could come up here, we'll get you to sign this paperwork.
Council rules of order.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Sean Lucas,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the City of Nixa,
and the ordinance of the City of Nixa,
and that I will faithfully demean myself
and I will faithfully demean myself
in the office of City Council Member District 2,
in the office of City Council Member District 2,
for which I was elected
for which I was elected
on the 6th day
on the 6th day
of April 2021.
of April 2021.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both of our new members. We look forward to working with you over the next 3 years. We're much better prepped this year. Everybody has like their computers and everything, you know. Usually it's just they have no idea what we're going to talk about. And go on with it. Move on to the consent agenda.
No, sir.
Oh.
We need to go ahead and have the mayor pro tem
Oh,
election.
yes, I'm sorry. Why is that not? Oh, it is in my, sorry, I skipped over that. Move on to the mayor pro tem election. We'll accept nominations for the mayor pro tem.
I'd like to nominate Jared Giddens.
I'll second that.
Any further nominations? Button at the bottom. Yep, there you go. Any further nominations? Seeing none, I will close the nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Giddens shall be mayor pro tem. So now you get to switch with Mr. Giddens.
Oh.
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs.
Well, it was nice. All these things.
I'm sorry, Darlene. You guys will be okay, right? Your nameplate.
Oh, pick your name up. They don't have names yet. Oh, do they have, they have names? Oh, yeah, perfect. I think he took the whole thing, so just put it back.
Okay, that works.
Put it back together.
Real power. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Thank you. Guess I should stick that up there, huh?
All right, now we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Yes, sir.
Would anyone like to remove any items from tonight's consent agenda? Seeing none, need motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
All right. We will move on to the visitor section. Do we have a scheduled visitor?
We do. This evening, we have Dean Ferguson from the Department of Child Services. He's here tonight to ask for a fee waiver.
Working on it. Oh. Maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not.
Matt, is Mr. Ferguson here?
This is a-
Okay. He had called and asked,
great.
requested to be on the agenda. Evidently, he
Okay.
is not in this evening.
All right, we'll move on to any other visitors.
We have Mr. Jeff Belcher that signed up.
Mr. Belcher.
All right, first I'd like to say congratulations to Sean and Amy, our new council members.
Mr. Belcher, if you could say your name and your address.
Oh, my name is Jeff Belcher. I live in Nixa, Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
Again, congratulations. This thing's been rather divisive, it really has. And as part of the committee that initiated this recall process, we'd kind of like to make a statement. Apparently there were some comments made by Mr. Orff on Facebook, basically more or less claiming that we're looking at you guys like enemies. That's not the case. It's sad to be where we're at this point, but we feel wholly that the citizens should never tolerate such an extreme overreach of their local government. Nobody on the petitioners committee sees any of the city council as an enemy in any capacity. Not 20%, not 1%, not ever. You guys are elected here. You may not all be our district, but you're voted in. Our goal is to protect the citizens of Nixa and the home charter that was prescribed in 2011, I believe, maybe 2010. A lot of information going through here now. Anyhow, that was just kind of, I wanted to make that clear. We're not here to fight anybody. We're just asking, do what's right. Listen to the people. I know I've got 5 minutes. I don't know where our timer went, but I'm going to try to keep this under my 5 minutes or I'll get my mic cut, I'm sure. I do appreciate this technology that we've got now. Now we get actual recordings and minutes to these meetings. I think there have been things that have been construed when I look back at things I've spoken about, and then you look at the internet website page minutes. There's some gray areas there. Not everything can be recorded verbatim. So this is wonderful. And on that note, I'd like to address some of the things that the mayor did respond after I spoke last week, myself and Ron. Again, we're just asking you to do the job you were voted to do and represent the people. You stated in your response to us that you conferred with our city council, you conferred with Ozark City Council, you conferred with Christian County and Greene County and medical facilities in Springfield. Your people said no. We did not want a mask mandate. Your city council said no. They did not want a mask mandate. And then there was another section you responded to regarding lying. I feel that one was directed personally at me. I guess you construed that as I was asking if there would be a vote that night to remove the mandate. Truth of the matter is, I've been asking and asking and asking, meeting after meeting after meeting, what is the process to get another vote put on your guys' table? That's when I faced the blank stares. Nobody dared to answer. Nobody cared to comment. Nothing. Each and every time I was here, I'm mentioning, how can we get this up for a vote? And I was getting nothing, no response. Just so that we could see, put it up for a vote so that we can see where each and every council member stood currently. Because this was a moving target and continues to be a moving target. I didn't see any harm in saying, you know what, if we voted it in July, why can't we vote again? I know you guys have asked and asked and asked, what can we do to keep him from coming to city council? And I've told you repeatedly, do it the right way, put it up for a vote. Use the legislative process as it's intended. Again, I asked several times, how can we vote on this today? How can we vote on this next meeting? How do we do this? Nobody cared to answer until, I believe it was in December, Andy Davis finally got a response from Councilman Perryman, and Darlene Graham, I believe, commented as well that evening that they would still not vote yes. And had they had, I believe that was Darlene's response. And on the same question, would you execute a mandate order? Perryman said no, he would not execute a mandate with an executive order, which implies to me that he was thinking, let's do it the right way, legislatively, use our representatives and their votes and the voices of the people to make that decision. Not just arbitrarily decide, you know what, I'm going to listen to Ozark City Council. I'm going to listen to the hospitals. I'm going to listen to Greene County. Those aren't in your realm. Your realm is the people of Nixa, the citizens. I've got a picture here. I guess since we're just visitors, I assume we're still not allowed to use the audiovisual equipment in council. Is that correct? Unless we're chosen to be a presenter.
If you have a picture you'd like to pass around, we'd be happy to look at it.
Well, get my fat fingers to work here. Got to show it to you?
Sure.
Actually, I'll read it here first.
Yep.
Let me get my, I'm down to 17 seconds. It says an
We'll do it one more
ordinance
time.
on the council of the city of Nixa, Missouri, extending the declaration of emergency established by ordinance 2110 until further ordered by the mayor or a vote of council, authorizing the mayor to enter and amend an order prohibiting or limiting public gatherings.
Sorry.
May I finish?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Prohibiting or limiting public gatherings or certain numbers of persons in the corporate limits in the city of Nixa, Missouri, and the order a curfew or order the closing of businesses for the duration of the city council's determination of emergency, establishing a penalty for violating any such prohibitions, allowing the city administrator to enact certain employment regulations addressing COVID-19, and enacting certain rules and regulations pursuant to Section 192.290. I can see where you've got the power to shut down businesses and limit gatherings. I don't see anything in there regarding a mask mandate in particular. I just don't see it. It's not in the verbiage. Furthermore, last week in your response, you did make a direct comment, and I'll quote, "Every state, federal government, almost every city and state across the country put in some sort of emergency mandate related to COVID." Well, I did some looking up on the fancy thinking box here, and I found a total of 16 entities in the state of Missouri that enacted a mask mandate. Obviously, the majority are going to be Kansas City, surrounding areas, St. Louis, surrounding areas. There was no state mandate to wear a mask, nor was there ever a county mandate to wear a mask. So I'd just like to throw that out there. No state mandates, no county mandates, and as a small rural city, we're going to decide we need to do one. And this is kind of off topic, but I do recall you saying also that you can plan to continue this great relationship we have with the city of Ozark and their new mayor. Would that be construed as directly violating their own mask mandate?
Sorry, not understanding your question.
Well, there's a video circulating with you at the Republican Lincoln Days. Mr. Orff, Mr. Steele, and Mr. Peterson were all in attendance.
Okay.
Clearly on video, that mandate was still in effect. However, Mr. Orff was the only participant in that group of three that did have a face mask on, with no social distancing, obviously. And I just wonder how you could, possibly do that in good faith, saying, here, we're going to extend our hand and we're going to be partners getting through this together, but I'm not going to listen to your order. And with that, that's all I've got.
All right. I will be happy to respond to those. The one before the last one about the order, that quote was specifically regarding an emergency order, which the county, every city, I think even the smaller cities also enacted that, not specific to masking, but just an order of emergency, which was the order you were previously speaking to. I love that the Mr. Orff and Mr. Giddens and I have had many conversations about the interesting video of us at Lincoln Day. So, as we know from Mr. Orff's comments and the article in the headliner last week, Mr. Belcher has some passing interest in the truth, but in this particular case, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't believe you were at the event, so you got the information secondhand, so I'm happy to explain it to you. I was proud to attend the Christian County Lincoln Day event as a sponsor of that event last week, and to hear from speakers from, our federal, statewide, and local delegations. And I was honored to attend with Mr. Orff and Mr. Giddens. We also sat with Western District Commissioner Hosey Ballou and his wife Debbie, and my lifelong friend Amy Dent, Christian County Auditor, and her mother Sandra. So all 8 of us wore our masks when entering, wore our masks while waiting for dinner, wore our masks while speaking to other people, and wore our masks while entering. So we 100% complied with the current regulations at that time in the city of Ozark. Of course, the video that you had was of when the speakers were talking and we were eating. So as in any time of that, if you go into a restaurant, you're allowed to remove the mask to eat. So you also could have maybe caught me in the last couple weeks eating with my wife at Piccolo's, or eating with my friends at Morning Day Cafe, or eating at El Charro, 3 of my favorite restaurants in town. But El Charro, I think we did probably eat outside. But as a lifelong Republican, I believe in the rule of law, not just the laws that you want to follow, but all laws. And so I work very hard to meet those laws, and I think that we all did a very good job with it. Where else were we? Tried to catch everything here. I'll let Mr. Orff speak for himself if he would like to speak to the quote from Ronald Reagan that I think was mentioned. As for not being here to fight, I will take the high road there and move forward. The concept that the people said no, some people did speak out against the ordinance. Some of those people have stayed with that. Some of those people have not. The council at the July meeting did say no, but after consultation, as it is laid out in the order, the state of emergency order, there was an agreement from the majority, as we've spoken about many times, based on your request, Mr. Belcher. The order itself, that is an interesting one. Can you bring that up, Drew? The emergency, so it'd be the ordinance 1111. It's on the Nixa strong page, probably, I'm gonna say. For future reference, if you want to provide us with any materials, we're happy to accept those. If you want to send them to us to our emails, or if you want to provide what you would like us to bring up so that we could check it beforehand. We can't just have, we don't randomly have people just bring up things because we have no way of knowing what it would be, of course.
Well, could I ask you to pull up the Facebook video? Because I don't recall seeing a fork in anybody's hand. And I've watched it repeatedly.
Yeah. It's under the, I think it's the March 23rd, so just go a little bit farther.
Ordinance number 2111, that helps.
That's not the easiest way to look it up. Keep a little bit, one more. Right there, read the full ordinance here. Yep. Zoom in on that a little bit. I think this is the ordinance passed by the council on March 23rd of last year, outlining the state of emergency, and that's what I said. That was the document that I said that the county, every state, almost every city had something similar to this, declaring that there was a state of emergency due to the COVID pandemic last year. If you scroll down to, do you know what it is, Nick? Is it like section 3 or 4? And zoom in a little bit. So in the up a little bit. Oh yeah, there you go. I believe Mr. Belcher quoted the header portion, which the ordinances all have a summary section at the top. So section 4 there says during the duration of the civil emergency described in section 1 of this ordinance, the City Council of Nixa, Missouri, hereby authorizes the mayor, after consultation with appropriate city, county, and/or state officials, as determined within his discretion, is to issue an order amending which public gatherings are prohibited, either in number or in type. If his judgment prohibits, should be amended to further and protect the public health. So that is the section that applies to the masking order. It is a limiting of public gatherings by type, of types being not masked. We went through several of these at the beginning of the pandemic with the stay-at-home order and the setting certain levels of occupancy of buildings and things like that, along with the statewide stay-at-home mandate that was put in place at the beginning of the pandemic. We had several of these. I think we worked on we made several changes for restaurants. We were definitely one of the first cities to completely release and remove all restrictions as to occupancy. And we worked very well with our restaurants and businesses to try to take off all of those types of restrictions as fast as possible. And we've been lucky that, over the last year, almost a year from now, we haven't had any limitations on occupancy on the type, or on the number. The other thing was type, so we did have some items around social distancing, and that would be a type. Masking and other PPE requirements would also be a type as well. So that's the section under which the order comes under. I think the other thing was asking about how the order could have been removed. I believe every member of council understood how the order could have been removed. Am I correct in stating that? Yes, so as this ordinance says, and I think all the orders say as well, at any time, the mayor or council, and I believe when Mr. Sanders, Mr. Belcher, Mr. Davis, or Mr. Lee brought it up multiple times in the past that I asked council, would anyone like to make a motion to remove that? No motion was ever accepted or ever made or accepted. And so council, understanding how the system worked, decided not to make that choice. So did I miss anything else? Lisa, would you like to respond to the Ronald Reagan quote? I don't know if you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I don't see you guys as an enemy. I see you guys as passionate citizens, and that's something that should be commended. The quote was specifically talking about views of the mayor in that outside of the pandemic, I feel like your group would agree with the mayor on the majority of issues. And so this is the one issue out of a majority of issues. But you guys are passionate citizens. I don't see you as an enemy. I appreciate your passion. I wish more people had passion like you.
All right, we'll move on to the next visitor.
No one else has signed up this evening,
Okay.
but it's still open.
We will leave the visitor section open. If anyone else would like to speak, you can do so at this time. We will close visitor section and move on to, I lost my spot. Service awards. All right, have one service award this month. Joe Pruitt, 5 years with the recycling department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe's been with the recycling department from the beginning of whenever he was hired on at the city. He eventually moved up to recycling coordinator last year. Joe does an excellent job. He keeps everything moving. He takes a lot of weight off my shoulders, and I couldn't ask for a better employee, and I hope he stays around for another 5 or 10 years.
No problem.
We've got another person wanting to make.
I personally want to thank Joe. Since Joe's been on as supervisor, we definitely have seen, I think a heightened improvement in customer service at the recycling center and a reduction in complaints to the council, which is always good. All right, we'll move on to our presentation section. Marshall.
I try to keep this clean, but I guess you kind of do that.
Matt does a good job.
I had my shots, so. I'll run through this. Kind of new council members having a first shot out, have to listen to an audit report, but it's not too bad. Page 1 and 2 are the opinion pages. Let me see here. I'll blame my grandson, putting him out of order. A few more years, he's going to take over, so you can see a nice young face up here and say, this old tart guy. Okay, on the opinion page, it's the same format. Now, you got 3 opinions in this report because you had federal grants, CARES Act. And when you go over $750,000, there's more schedules, more opinions. Good news, there's really nothing, no files, no errors, no messes, okay? So everything was fine on those. But first paragraph just covers all the statements covered in the opinion. Second paragraph recites your responsibilities, city responsibilities. 3 paragraphs, what we call, now, because you had federal grants, standards under the government auditing standards. So it kicks it up a notch, and simply means there's more opinions in the report. And that's that italics word, government auditing standards. The key one's the bottom paragraph, and it's what we call clean opinion. It says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above presents fairly in all material respects the financial position of all the funds as of December 31st, 2020. Now, what that tells you is 2 things. The format and contents is in proper order. If we let every council pick how they would like to do this, it'd be chaos. So there is a book about that thick, and it has to be in a format. And Jennifer understands this format quite well with her prior experience. And when we submit it for a certificate of achievement financial reporting, we get nitpicked, but we always, 6 years, 7, city's always gotten that certificate of financial achievement financial reporting. We found out a month ago we had to say that whole thing. We can't use the acronym anymore. So another deal. Then on page 2, it just recites the MD&A and budget actual is in the back of the report. And then the next 2 paragraphs has to be in there because the schedule statement, federal financial assistance, CFA, is back there. So you have to label those and then basically say in relation to the statements. So, and then the bottom paragraph is back to the internal control and compliance document on government auditing standards, which is in the back of the format. So key thing is you got a clean opinion, okay? That's the important thing. It's followed by MD&A letter, and that is supposed to simplify some of the financial reports in the pages. I'm not sure about that, but that's, years ago they decided you had to have an MD&A letter, so, and as far as the certificate of achievement, you have to have it, so it's in there. There is a section there that kind of talks about the highs, what went up, what went down, how the net profit changed, and that is kind of informative. On page 18 is your governmental funds. Now, in cities, everything but water, sewer, electric is a governmental fund, okay? It's the easiest way to figure it. And governmental funds have a different format, back again to the opinion, than you do on the water, sewer, electric. Basically, the difference is capital improvements it shows as an expense, and debt payment it shows as an expense. And you get into the accounting, this is modified accrual, there's full accrual. Let's stop right there. So on page 18 is your profit and loss statement. General fund, before transfers, fee in lieu of $1,024,670. Net brought it up to $9,422,481. Now some of that fund balance is restricted as to use, but the unrestricted portion is still, you ain't gonna have to follow me on this, I'll just tell you. It's $6,398,183, and as a benchmark, I always told you, if you take the total expenditures, $6,918,545, and you had half that, you're in real good shape. So you got $6,398,183. So I guess that's, you're in real good shape, okay?
Real good times 2, right? Real good times 2.
Yeah, excellent shape. I always joke and say, if I could send you to Washington, D.C. and explain to them how to do this, it'd be great, but I can't. Street fund, because of capital improvements, $575,285, it showed a decrease, $42,066, but you ended the year with $3,486,431. Excellent number for street. And in your street, a lot of your some improvements are expensed off, and that's usually like $600,000 to $800,000. So that's why the number expense $2,099,000 looks high. What do you micro? You call it?
Doing some micro pavers.
Yeah, micro paving. Yeah, we expense that instead of capitalizing that. So, but you still have an excellent balance. Now, what's grouped as total non-major funds, there's a formula 10-15 rule. So the ones are small funds, they end up being combined in the back, and that's on page 64. And that's simply the building inspection fund ended $36,866, stormwater, $81,043, and park, $525,982. Your park showed probably a increase this year because it got shut down, basically, so you didn't have that much in expenditures as before, which put it to the plus. So all those three are grouped and then short-term non-major. I think Jennifer brought up to me, could we include those in the general fund? Yes, you could. That's an accounting thing, don't worry about it. It's still accounted for, but those could be combined. But now the profit and loss on water, sewer, and electrics on page 21. You know, this is better than last year. I did this
On Zoom.
Zoom.
We did it on Zoom last
and
year,
you could
yeah.
hear me and I couldn't hear you. I can operate that real good now. Okay? I've got quite good at that. Not as good as my grandson, but I'm good. I'm better. On the profit and loss on the waterworks, wastewater, sewer, and then electric. Down at the bottom, the water showed a net increase of $1,026,045, sewer $846,049, electric $1,140,062. And to really, from your standpoint, to really analyze that, you always want to go to page 22, the statement of cash flow. And basically, the formula there is, from operations, it should be a positive number. You'll be surprised some towns, smaller towns, sometimes have a negative number, but then you always have to cover your principal payments and your interest paid. So you can see on the water funds, $1,304,521. You had transfer fee in lieu of out, and then overall it decreased $682,308. But if you look up capital outlays, $1,676,203. So that's one. The decrease is not to worry about because you had such large capital improvements. Overall, you ended the year with $4,877,446, which is more than 45 days of operation. And so your water's in good shape. Wastewater, same thing. You had a large capital outlay, $1,188,738. Almost broke even, really. $16,658 decrease. Still $5,500,846. Excellent. And electric, even with the capital outlay of $1,189,560, you still went $342,770. And then your operation expense, there was the buyout on Southwest Power Spring CDU contract, and that was just expensed off. So overall, those are all excellent positions, excellent cash balances. Then you have to go page 23 to, it goes forever, to 23 to 57 are what I call notes to financial statements. That has to be in a report, and the outline is it goes significant accounting policies, which I know you're really interested in, cash, depreciation schedule, long-term debt, and about 5 pages of a footnote for loggers. And the key on that is 49, that schedule there. And the way you read that is column A is, well, I'll make you fly through that. 49. Yeah, turn your hymnal. Okay. Liability, A is liability. So if everybody retired, you need $23,376,596 in the fund. B is what's in there in investments, $19,971,003. So it's got a liability of $2,405,593. Given the number of people, I guarantee loggers is an excellent retirement system is how they operate. You're safe. Over the period, your percentages will change 1% up or down, but they do actuarial studies and make sure this mathematically comes out fine. Now, I can say actuary, but I don't ask me to do that, okay? I know they know more math than I do. Then you have your budget to actual, and we're okay on that. And then You have some more combining, and then you have two more opinions. One is internal control compliance on governmental standards, no issues. And then you have to do another internal control compliance on the federal programs, no issues there. And then you have to have a schedule of the federal grants, and that CARES Act is what jumped it up, and the reason we had to do it this year. The remaining thing to do, state auditor has received the financial report for the city, approved that, or they acknowledge they received it. And the last step is we have to send this to what we call Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and then I approve it, Jennifer approves it, and then the federal government's happy. And that's the final step in this we have to do. So, any questions? A lot of big numbers, a lot of pages. I always say, anytime you want me to come back and bore you to tears, I'll gladly go through the accounting of it. My grandson's getting his degree in accounting and going to take over Papa's practice, but he's been amazed on cities how much more, it's kind of like dealing with four or five businesses at once. It's kind of like a Rubik's Cube accounting, and it's a little bit more complicated. I think to get his master's, he only needs one elective course to get it, because you have to have 150 hours to get your certificate, so that puts you up to a master's. And he's going to take governmental accounting for his elective for his master's, so I think he knows it by now. Any questions you have? Glad to answer them.
Any questions? Are new members ready to leave yet?
Yeah.
Wait till like 10 of them.
Okay.
So we're good.
Okay,
That's what
yeah,
you're saying-
you're
That's what you're
excellent.
saying, Marshall, we're good?
You're good.
Okay.
And your young man has done an internal control policy. He was working on that. I gave him some sheets we use, and I think he's going to present that to you tonight. And those are the things a lot of small towns are, you're still by standards of small town, believe it. But a lot of them don't go that far. They don't go far enough to get the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting, which is an extra step, and Jennifer can attest that's a pain. And to do internal control policy, purchase policies, I commend you on doing that. Good job. Okay.
Any questions for Marshall? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. All right, we'll move on to our second presentation. Mr. Snyder, Public Services.
Mayor and Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you and speak tonight. I want to come before you to kind of talk about the citywide cleanup and large item pickup. In the past, we've had citywide cleanup every year, once a year, and it's been beneficial for the residents. However, I think we can kind of go a different route, maybe be more beneficial for the residents and the city, and Republic Services at the same time. When we first started this program years ago, the city was probably around maybe 2,000 to 3,000 residents. Now it's grown to be, closer to 9,000, or 2,000 to 3,000 homes. We're closer to 9,000 homes now. The last city cleanup we did, we spent over 228 man-hours on that one day. We had 21 trucks, right about 10 to 12 hours, different drivers throughout the day. And, when we do the citywide cleanup, one of the downfalls is people from outside the city tend to bring stuff to vacant homes. Many times we'll pick up trash at vacant homes that someone has dropped off. We want to make sure the city's clean, so we just go ahead and pick it up. But we see that quite often, when we did the city cleanup. This would kind of prevent that. The plan I'm going to put forward with you tonight, and because essentially they're actually stealing from residents. They're paying the monthly trash service because that's included in the monthly rate. So the people that are dropping stuff off at those homes, or landlords that are using it to bring from other locations outside the city, they're abusing that right. Another benefit is you see with Amazon and a lot of ordering online these days, people need that bulk item pickup more often than once a month or more often than just a citywide cleanup once a year. A lot of times residents will have garage sale, at different times throughout the year and just not on the citywide garage sale day. What I would like to discuss with City Council, move forward with City Council, is implementing amend the current contract from allowing one large item per month and taking away the citywide cleanup day and amending it to be as needed. So if someone needed it 2 or 3 times a month, we'd pick up large item 2 or 3 times a month. For people that, may buy a large item this week, go out and pick up another couch the following week or something like that, or TV, we would do it more often. And we would do away with citywide cleanup each year. So, in addition to that, been speaking with a couple of departments, with Public Works Department, and one of the things was mentioned was the city looking at some of the neighborhoods, maybe doing like a neighborhood cleanup program. We've worked with other cities in the area where we do a drop-off dumpster program, and we work with local organizations, churches, where they can benefit by going around picking up, and people can bring stuff. So we would set dumpsters in a neighborhood, and people could bring stuff to that dumpster. And we could work where we did 2 or 3 neighborhoods a year that way, where you might have a lot of nuisance properties, a lot of people that have trash sitting outside their house or they're in their front yard. And we could work with the nuisance officer and the police department and Public Works to notify or see those areas and then notify those residents, work with organizations like churches and such, the chamber, and where we could do a program like that on a day throughout the week or a weekend. So, I kind of gave you an item list of how we would change it tonight, as well as there's a picture sheet with a couple of pictures kind of showing what we've done in Springfield that shows like nuisance houses that you might see. We don't want to see any situations like that in Nixa, but there's stuff like that happens. And the top picture is kind of going to show a cleanup like we did up in Springfield, where we did a drop-off program. Got workers from local churches to assist, and they would actually drive around to the properties, pick up the trash from elderly, where they could actually go on the property, where we cannot actually go on the property. Everything has to be at the curb. So, now I'd like to come before the council at the next meeting or the meeting following with an amendment to the contract, if that would be possible.
Mr. Lyles.
Yep, Mayor, Council, Chris and I spoke in depth about these possibilities of looking at doing an amendment to the contract, and I can tell you that, the original concern was that we want to make sure that we were getting something in return for giving up the cleanup day, because that is by contract, and currently the contract does allow one large item a month, as Mr. Snyder stated. But after speaking with Mr. Snyder, I'm very confident that this would provide the opportunity for our citizens to actually get rid of additional items that they wouldn't be able to get rid of now. Whereas, they could, as Mr. Snyder stated, they could ask for additional large items to be picked up, as well as he did assure me that if residents wants to clean out like a garage or something like that they will not hesitate to go ahead and pick up all of those items on the regular trash day. So I think that that in conjunction with the fact that Republic Services is willing to look at doing a new program to clean up certain neighborhoods at a time, my recommendation to council would be to strongly consider allowing an amendment to the contract.
Any questions from council?
How do you keep track of, if I had a large box every single week of the year, would I get a talking to from you, or?
So generally, unless it becomes an issue where someone's setting out they've tore down a huge shed in the backyard and setting a huge shed out, generally those are the only discussions we have. We've never left the city dirty. We've always picked up the city and cleaned up the city. We've had a great relationship with the city for 20 years that I've been with the company. And, we want to continue that. So we've always made sure when we leave the city, it's always clean, it's always taken care of.
So outside of something extremely large, there aren't any thresholds that we would need to know about beforehand?
There's nothing we haven't picked up yet, except like a building. And I think, we've had to actually call a couple of people and say, we cannot take, Or we had one gentleman one year that actually drug a deck out in front of his house. He pulled it around with his truck and left the whole deck as a whole piece, and we're like, we can't take the deck like this. So, and we actually came back over a few weeks as he tore it down a little bit, piece at a time. We asked that he cut it up, and we worked with him on it, but, we're willing to work with every resident in situations like that, but, so.
Is there any communication that needs to occur between the residents and Republic as far as, hey, we've got a large item this week, or?
We asked that the residents call in. We're going to go ahead and take it if they just set it out, because some residents, they'll just set it out. But we asked that they call in to kind of give us a head up, especially if it's, it could be a very large item. Big screen TVs, we don't see very many of those anymore, but, there's still some of the old box 60-inch TVs out there that, that takes 2 to 3 people to pick up. Hide-a-beds, when people do those, those are kind of challenging to pick up by one person. But with the machines that we have with the claws and such, we can get probably 95% of the items that someone sets out by themselves.
Any other questions?
So are we thinking of doing this before the citywide cleanup this year, or starting it after the citywide cleanup?
We would like to do it before. We'd like to get it in the next council meeting, get everything amended and move forward and get this out on the city social media pages, city website, the Republic Services page.
Is there enough time to get that done?
Yeah, we can definitely push the message out pretty quickly, and I think that we could probably have an amendment ready by next council meeting if we're directed to do so. And I'm sure that Drew will work with Mr. Snyder and Public Services to get that message out pretty quickly.
We've actually already worked with them to prepare some messaging, so we already have some messaging ready to go. If you decide to adopt the proposed thing, we have some messaging we can actually put out tomorrow.
Okay. Yep, bring the contract back to us at the next meeting, and we will review it at that time.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. And the last presentation today on fluoridation. Mr. Cogan.
Mayor and council, in addition to some information that I provided to you at the last meeting, we completed some more detail. I wanted to provide you a little more information, and then once I kind of go through this information that I've gathered for you, I want to introduce Jackie Barger. He's the executive director of the Children's Smile Center, and he wanted to visit with you. I know you had asked if we could find someone. Gwen Solentrup with the Department of Health and Human Services had called a number of times, and she provided some information and reached out as well. But Jackie's here this evening, and he's asked if he could visit with you. In our attempts to provide some additional information related to our testing, one of the things that we realized was that our 2019 and 2020 reports were incorrect, coming from DNR. We didn't catch the 2019 one last year. However, when 2020 showed up just the week after our last council meeting, it was obvious that they basically just rolled over the same information from 2019 to the 2020 report, which is why we've not advertised that report. Drew hasn't put that out on the media yet because it's incorrect. In further discussion, our staff worked with DNR and found out that basically in 2019, they had put somebody else's information input into our data. So actually, when our number should have been around 103, it was 2.2 or 2.02. And so it was showing us up in the middle of the area, I mean, halfway to where the limit was, when in fact we were down around 1 part per million. As I'd reported to you, we're usually in that, 0.75 to 1.0 range. However, what comes out in the report is actually a range from 0 to whatever the high number was, but it doesn't give an average. For operations, as I had mentioned, we continually inject a small amount in 4 of 8 locations. We've got 8 well locations. We inject into 4 of those. Every day, all 4 of those locations are checked, and that's 7 days a week. So on average, that's 120 tests a month where we check those. We also turn in a monthly sample to the state, and of course, and they run their own separate sample. That's where they produce their numbers at. Our numbers are usually very close to theirs. We'll be a few points off here and there. A lot of that probably just has to do with calibration of equipment or different type of equipment that we use versus theirs. I know our guys calibrate our equipment continually. We're very confident in what our numbers are. The other thing that you had asked for is for us to reach out to some neighboring communities and determine who does and does not treat with fluoride. We reached out, actually had responses from 9 of those close by, and I'd put a chart. If you'd want to scroll down just a little bit, Evan, to that last page, you'll see that Springfield, Republic, Willard, Stratford, and Branson, they do actually use fluoride, and we pulled down the DNR test reports. Hopefully theirs weren't in error. We didn't check that. We just checked ours. But in looking at their numbers, I doubt they are, because their numbers are very good and right in line with what we're seeing. Willard's obviously is very low. Now, the others there were 4 of them that we checked that do not treat, and so basically it's not quite half and half, but 6 and 4 is what we came up with, and those are the ones that were close by to us. I was thinking that Ozark did treat at one time, but they actually didn't treat. They did go out to a vote back in around 2000. I think it was in November of 2000, and it was narrowly defeated not to start injecting fluoride. So, but in summary, which I did some of this at your last meeting. Of course, we've been adding fluoride to raw water since the late 70s. We do have naturally occurring fluoride, and so there's a variation in how that in the amount. We can only put in a set amount, whatever the pump has. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got those turned all the way down as far as they'll go. But when you have a fluctuation in the raw water, it's going to make that change a little bit. Now, if we were to get to a situation where, it was creeping up on us, we may have to just start injecting in a fewer number of locations. That would be our only alternative at that point. Under our operating permit, we cannot exceed 4 parts per million. And of course, a test of 2 parts per million or higher, though not a violation, it would generate a warning on our CCR report, which the one that came in error actually did have a bright red warning on it that says, you've got 2 parts per million here, but that new one that will come out won't have that, and which will be the corrected one. There's no legislation, of course, that requires us to treat or not treat. However, the only requirements we have, like I mentioned, was the cap of 4 parts per million, or if we were to change what we were doing, either if you were a community that was adding, or in our case, if we were to do away with it, we would need to do notifications to Department of Health and Human Services, receive information from the local health department and DNR. So our budget runs approximately $10,000 a year. Some years it'll fluctuate within a few $100s of that every year. So other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the information that we put together in addition to that. And once we're finished with that, I'll introduce Mr. Barger.
Any questions?
I have a question. You did say that we have naturally occurring fluoride.
We do.
So do you have any idea what the range could be expected to be of the naturally occurring if we did not add fluoride?
The most, I'll be honest, I don't know a complete range. I know the most recent test we did was I believe it was .278, right in there, Jason, which was our most recent.
And what's the explanation for our levels being quite a bit higher than the other?
It's just it's the amount. A lot of it has to do with the equipment. We can only inject a certain amount, or we have to, we've got those pumps that we have that are for fluoride will inject a lot more than what we're doing to keep our numbers down as low as they are, which they're usually in the 0.75 to 0.8 range. We have those 4 pumps turned as far down as they'll go without them losing prime. If we go down any farther, we'll just be out there repriming the pumps to keep them going. So, and then of course, when you have a little fluctuation in the natural occurring amount, that'll be where your fluctuation, that's where we wound up with a test of like 1.03.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug.
Okay, I'll introduce Jackie Barger. He's the Executive Director of the Children's Smile Center. I believe you probably know Jackie. He's very active around town in the community, so. Mr. Barger?
See, my notes say Director Kraus wants us to bring hot air balloons back to the city. No, that's another.
I agree with.
That's another
Mr.
meeting. I'm
Kraus.
Sorry, yeah. I've been at Children's Smile Center as their director since 2010, and we care for children from a 6-county area, Christian County being our home base with our dental clinic in Ozark. And on average, we take care of over 6,200 children every year from our 6-county area. There are about 25,000 children that are covered by Medicaid in our 6-county area. We are the only private practice dental office that is available to provide care for those kids. Since I've been there in 2010, the numbers of children that we care for are dominated in our entire company by children, just based on the numbers, no surprise, from Nixa and from Ozark. Now, this is an anecdotal note, but it's always been, since I've been there, that there will be an average of 700 to 1,000 kids that we'll see as patients of record from January 1 to December 31st. Between 700 and 1,000 that have a Nixa address. And then we'll see anywhere from 1,100 to 1,300 kids with an Ozark address. I consider a 5 or 6 mile difference between the city here and our clinic just down the road in Ozark as literally being ground zero. It could be all one city as far as I'm concerned for transportation. When it gets farther than 10 to 15 miles, we see more families, especially low-income families, that struggle with transportation and scheduling, even for what we might think is a reasonable distance to overcome. But anyway, ground zero, so I look at them together, and I was talking to a dentist, this was 10 years ago, and I said, why the difference in the numbers? And he said, I'll tell you. Nixa has fluoride in the water, and Ozark doesn't. Now, a challenge that we continue to have, we've had it since day one, is getting folks to understand that a dentist is there for prevention and for regular care and not just a problem focus. I'm not going to poll each one of you to see how you all treat using your dentist, but if your tooth hurts, you're going to go see a dentist, right? But we know if you can go to a dentist when it's not hurting, that prevention can happen. So if we see folks generally coming because of problems, and the numbers are always higher in a community that does not fluoridate compared to a community that does, and that's anecdotal. I've not done a scientific research project on that, but I think it's worth noting. I do want to comment on behalf of several people that we know. Because of who we are as a nonprofit organization, and we try, obviously you all know this, we try to be very visible in our communities that we serve, especially with Nixa and with Ozark, but we get to know the dental community very well. And I made a list. I was shocked, really, at the connection as I go down the list real quick, and I'm going to mention these names for you real quick. Dr. Anthony Lee, right across the street here at Crossroads Dental, used to work part-time for Children's Smile Center. Dr. Dove at Nixa Smiles, Dr. Larson at Nixa Family Dental, Dr. Sutherland at Nixa Dental. All three of those dentists are good friends of the Smile Center. Dr. Gardner with Expedition Dentistry. He used to work part-time for the Smile Center. Dr. Rick Sherman, just stone's throw from this building at Capstone Dentistry, recently completed 7 years of service as a part-time dentist for the Smile Center. Dr. Joe Coffrin with Dental Care of Nixa. We have former staff of ours who work with him, and a former dentist that used to work with us part-time that worked with him. Mac Dental, Dr. Jacob McLaughlin used to be a part-time dentist with the Smile Center, and Jacob and Janae, we know them, and then Kevin and Hillary Austin. Again, that office just a stone's throw from right here with Austin Orthodontics, and Kevin's been a longtime friend of the Smile Center. Hillary serves on our board of directors. I can tell you 100%, every one of these names that I mentioned, which is the majority of the Nixa dental community, strongly support water fluoridation by municipalities. It has been listed as one of the 10 greatest public health achievements of the previous century, and it's one that continues to show great effect. Something, and some of you who know me know I'm not a dentist, so I got to be careful if I start expressing opinions that sound like they're from a dentist, but here's something that I learned that I want to share with you. I think it's important. There's two different ways that fluoride affects good oral health, and I didn't know this till I had it technically defined to me. There's the topical application of fluoride, and that's what I think about most often. When we provide a fluoride application to a tooth, that fluoride stays there. It's in a shellac, a varnish literally, that specifically goes to the teeth. But then there's a systemic application of fluoride, and didn't know I was going to use the word systemic, talking to a city council meeting, but I am. And what that means is when it's in the water, it helps, especially in children, it helps with the formation of teeth before they even come into the mouth. I can tell you that we have hundreds and hundreds of children that we have to provide very drastic and extreme dental work for. Their teeth have come in. When their baby teeth come out and their adult teeth come in, we have a lot of kids with bad hygiene, bad nutrition, as well as a lack of fluoride applications and good oral health and good oral care. Their adult teeth will come in a stage of what we call demineralized. In other words, they're already coming in at a deficit. The topical application of fluoride is more to treat what's already there. The systemic application of fluoride in a municipal water system is there to help teeth form as a child grows, so they have stronger teeth to start. Before they even go to the dentist and we look at their teeth for the first time, there's going to be a big difference. So I thought that was significant in terms of understanding the impact of fluoride. We are convinced and are very confident of the studies that have been done for decades and decades, specifically led by the American Dental Association, as well as independent studies that do show the level of fluoride that is used in municipal water systems is at a safe level. And I can tell you that there are toxic chemicals around us all the time, and there are regulations for their safety and for their use. And it is the same with fluoride. And I'm very confident with the water system and the application that you have in the city of Nixa that everything's being done at safe levels that promote good health and optimum growth for young children. Any questions?
I have a question again. If a child is drinking fluoridated water and brushing his or her teeth twice a day with fluoride toothpaste and going to the dentist, and I know this is like the optimal circumstance, going to the dentist twice a year and getting a fluoride treatment each time, is there any risk of over-fluoridation or of any...
At those levels, no.
Okay.
At those levels, no. As I understand the toxicity of fluoride, I was reading a study earlier today that showed the amount of fluoride from toothpaste that would need to be ingested before it to be toxic to be between 3 and 4 full tubes of toothpaste, and that's ingesting. Brushing it on your teeth, swishing and spitting it out is not ingesting. It's very, very small amounts that you would actually ingest, and that would be accidentally if you were to swallow some. But entire tubes of toothpaste, plural, are needed to even approach a level that would be considered toxic. Much like taking 2 full bottles of aspirin. Yeah, that's going to be toxic. But aspirin's still helpful and useful.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for reaching out to all the dentists for us as well. We appreciate that. So on that point, does anyone have any discussion, or do we want to move forward with looking at the process to remove the chlorine, or are we okay with the way it is now? Fluoride, I'm sorry. Everybody else, Doug did that before, I did that this time, yeah. The fluoride, sorry.
I don't have any, want.
Okay. All right, we will let that move on then. Thank you for getting us that information, Doug. All right, we'll move on to the first reading, Council Bill 2021-043.
First reading, Council Bill number 2021-043, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa repealing ordinance number 1388 for the purpose of opting into the sales tax holiday established by Section 144.049 RSMO.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the April 12th council meeting, you'll recall, we brought forward the information from our strategic plan. Action plan number 5 under economic sustainability was for the City of Nixa to participate in the back-to-school sales tax holiday. And as I reported back then, it requires us to enact an ordinance to opt in. We have to repeal the ordinance that was originally passed to opt out. And we went over some of the items that are included in the exemption. But since that time, our finance intern, Mr. Samuel Johnson, is pursuing a master's in public administration from Missouri State University. He'll be graduating in like a month. I'm sure he could tell you the days. But he's been our finance intern for the spring semester, and he's done a really great job. He's written several policies. Marshall mentioned the internal control policy that he has written that we'll be presenting for your review in subsequent months. But he has put together a report because there were some questions asked at the time of economic impacts, what kind of revenue loss, what are the numbers. It's difficult to pinpoint, but he did some research and put together a report, and I would like for him to present that to you at this time. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Samuel Johnson.
Good evening. It's an honor to be speaking here, and I'd like to thank Council, Mayor Steele, Mr. Lyles, and Mrs. Evans. So last council meeting, there was a couple questions asked about the sales tax holiday. So I'll start with one question that Mayor Steele asked, and it was if the use tax would apply to the sales tax holiday. And the short answer is yes, it would. I contacted the Missouri Department of Revenue, and they informed me because the use tax, the rate of the use tax is paid to the sales tax. When the sales tax goes down to 0 that weekend, use tax will also go down to 0. So there'll be no use tax for the items included in the back-to-school holiday. That means that Nixa shoppers won't pay the 4.2% state sales tax, the 1.5% city sales tax, or the 1.5% city use tax. Nixa shoppers will still pay the 1.5% county sales tax, and if they shop in the McCroskey Street CID, they'll pay that sales tax unless they choose to opt into the holiday as well. Another question was, what was the revenue impact going to look like? I'm not going to give you an exact number because it'll probably just be wrong, but the National Retail Federation did a survey, and in 2020, the average American family spent about $789 in back-to-school expenses. That's about $395 per student if you assume there's 2 students in a family. This includes everything that's in the back-to-school holiday, clothing, computers, school supplies. So Nixa Public Schools has about 6,446 students enrolled right now. So we can estimate that the total back-to-school spending will be about just over $2.5 million. Now, that's a lot of money. It's not necessarily the tax base for the weekend because that's spread out over, different semesters and, is Nixa the average, and not all that's going to be spent on the specific weekend. But it does show that the number is significant. And then also, August is one of the biggest sales tax months for the city. It's really just a little bit lower than the holiday season. Part of it is due to the state already having a sales tax holiday that weekend, so it pulls in revenues from September and July. But we know from this that there's a lot of revenue to be had from taxing school supplies. If I venture to have a range, it's probably it's in the 10,000s, probably upward limit of 30,000. But that's without offsetting factors or recouping any of the money from the other benefits of the sales tax holiday. So there's 2 main benefits of a sales tax holiday. One is to forego the revenue that the city would have collected and then give that to the consumer and alleviate the financial burden of back-to-school shopping. And the other is to stimulate the local economy. The idea is out-of-town shoppers will come in for the better tax rates. They'll buy a tank of gas, they'll buy their groceries, they'll eat at Nixa restaurants, or Nixa shoppers won't go into the bigger cities and spend their money there, and they'll spend their money at home. So the big question is, will a sales tax holiday bring people in and have people shop in Nixa? And that we have to look at the competitive advantage of Nixa. If you'll scroll down a little bit, there's a table. So most of the Springfield area, and I misspelled Springfield there, I'm so sorry. I swear I know how to spell it. Most of the Springfield area does not participate in a sales tax holiday. So if you see Springfield, Ozark, Battlefield, Branson, Willard, and Marshfield do not participate in the sales tax holiday. So that means for every $100 you spend, you will save $2.38 from shopping in Nixa if we participate in the sales tax holiday. So it's a pretty modest amount, but if you're buying several $100s of school supplies, it can add up. And then on the left are cities that are participating. The only major city that is participating in the area is Republic. Now, we still have an advantage because the Greene County sales tax rate is 25 cents higher than the Christian County sales tax rate. So we still have a small competitive advantage to them, and then there's smaller or far away cities, Rogersville, Aurora, Ava, Clever, Lebanon. Ava and Lebanon, their counties are opted in, so they have a sales tax rate of 0. So they're the only ones we have a relative disadvantage to, but the size and the distance makes it to where Nixa is really the prime candidate in the Springfield area for people who want the maximum savings for back-to-school shopping. So it's very likely that it would have the desired effect of stimulating the local economy. There are a few potential unintended consequences or negatives I want to raise up. Now, staff is recommending that we adopt it, and the strategic plan says that we should, so I'm not trying to contradict that, but I just want to raise these concerns. One is that some research has shown that retailers will actually raise their prices for sales tax holidays, and they'll eat some of that benefit from consumers. They do this because, for 2 reasons. Retailers reduce markdowns when they know a large amount of business is imminent. It's just smart business. Their goal is to make a profit. And then the second reason is the high concentration of purchases makes it difficult to keep inventory in stock, causing low supply, high demand, and raising prices. One study of a border town in Florida where a sales tax holiday was happening for clothing found that 20% of the tax benefit was absorbed by the retailer. So in our case, the retailer is likely Walmart or Amazon, It's not necessarily a bad thing that they're getting some of the benefit, but it's not really the intended consequence of the sales tax holiday. And then finally, one other concern is that we would create a competition scenario where it's a sort of race to the bottom. By participating in the sales tax holiday, Nixa may be encouraging surrounding jurisdictions to also participate. Nixa is essentially competing with other jurisdictions for the consumer's dollar, would likely take away business from surrounding communities. This may cause other jurisdictions to consider participating in the tax holiday. By other jurisdictions participating, Nixa will lose its competitive advantage. Some of the main benefits of the tax holiday, mainly the boost to the local economy, will disappear if Nixa loses its competitive advantage. So by choosing to opt in, Nixa may trigger a chain reaction. Ozark might get the same idea. And then in the long term, the consumers and the retailers will still benefit, but we might lose that stimulate the economy effect. So it's just a couple things to consider. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions?
All right.
Thank you very much. That was a very good report.
Thank you. It's more detailed in the council packet, or feel free to ask Jennifer any questions. Thank you.
Any further questions? We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time. Mr. Russell.
Mayor, Council, actually, I read that entire report. You did a fantastic job, buddy. Good job. As you know, this has been something that's been requested for a long time through the Chamber of Commerce office. We get requests every year by our businesses. Can you please, do the tax-free holiday thing? And of course, we bring it back to, it's a city council decision. So your Chamber of Commerce would openly and wholeheartedly support you guys bringing back the tax-free holiday weekend. So it's good for our businesses and good for our local economy. However, his reports about some of the negative, I could see a little bit of that. I could see maybe Ozark or others communities eventually adopting it, but that's okay. You know what? I mean, it's fine. I don't think that we're doing this to try to draw people to Nixa. We're doing it for our local citizens and to help them out. And if by the byproduct, if Spokane and Highlandville and Clever come to Nixa, that's great too. And they'll shop and dine here. So I really would highly encourage you to support this ordinance. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. We will leave open the public hearing. Anyone else would like to speak to this item? And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All right, move on to the next ordinance, 2021-044.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-044, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Section 6-13 of the Nixa City Code to allow for the keeping of chickens.
Got your chicken?
Good evening. As promised, staff has brought to you a proposed amendment to Chapter 6, the animal regulations for the City of Nixa, that would effectively remove what is now a complete prohibition on the keeping of chickens in residential areas of the city, and instead would allow for the keeping of at least or no more than 6 female chickens in a residential area on one single lot. And beyond that, it would provide for regulations that would require an appropriate enclosure, is the term we're using in the amendment, an enclosure to secure not only the chickens within the enclosure, but to also secure the chickens from intrusion by predators. It also requires that any situations that present as a public nuisance, either due to odor or uncleanliness or sanitary issues, that they may be abated by the city as such. And it also ensures that all other generally applicable animal regulations apply. Now, the way that we accomplish this in the amendment, as you'll notice, is the city had previously crafted some regulations to allow for chickens to be kept by the Nixa School District, placing a cap of 20 and then a number of other restrictions on the school district in the keeping of those chickens. What we did is just took that same body of regulation and then made that also applicable to the situation where you would keep it in your home, reducing the number for 20 at the schools still holds, but then the number for residential areas is moved down to 6. And then what we did is we kind of reviewed those regulations, and then as you'll notice, we reduced them significantly. We took out some of the regulations that over time and through experience we thought were either unnecessary or unhelpful in some way. And in doing so, I think we've crafted something that is a little bit more practical in terms of from an enforcement perspective, while also accomplishing the goal, if it is the council's goal, to allow for the chickens in the residential areas.
Any questions?
I'm just curious as to the reasoning for removing having their wings be clipped. Has that just been found to not really be necessary?
I think it's not necessary in a situation where an enclosure is required. So if we were to say you don't need an enclosure and you can let the chickens just roam around your yard freely, I think in that case staff would probably reevaluate whether the clipping of the wings is necessary. My understanding is that they could fly over a fence if they wanted to. So I think in that case we would reconsider.
I would consider putting that back in because most people are going to let them roam around their yards.
Well, so these regulations are structured so that that would not be allowed. You would have to keep them within some sort of an enclosure.
But if we let them clip their wings, they could be in the yards. Because there are people that do that now. I've talked to them, so.
That sounds to me like I guess a reasonable alternative that we could add as an amendment. I'd probably want to run that by our animal control folks to be certain, but that seems to me like you could put it in as an option. You could have a full enclosure, or you could have the clipped wings. I don't see any reason why that couldn't have one or the other type of a situation.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that one specifically as well, just from a animal control perspective of, I feel like it'd be easier to catch the chicken if you don't have to worry about, flying over a fence or something, then you have to go around the fence, and just for ease of capture and containment.
I thought the idea with the enclosure was also so that dogs and cats and other animals didn't get into people's backyards and eat their chickens at night.
True, right. So we would probably have to bring back into play that they are enclosed at night, which I think was previously the situation with the schools, was at night they had to be in a pen of some kind.
Well, no offense, but y'all don't know a lot about chickens because we had chickens when I grew up. Most chickens will go back to the hen house at night. If they've been around it, they want to be in someplace that's safe at night. You don't have to chase them around, they will go back there.
Right, as we're just saying, they have to have an enclosure. They couldn't just let their chickens, I guess, just live wildly in the backyard, right?
If their wings aren't clipped, they might go up in a tree and sit, so I would put the wing clip back in there.
Clip back in.
Yeah, Ms. Graham, it would be my recommendation to at least consider not allowing them to run loose in a yard. Even though if you do clip the wings, we have other situations like a non-fenced yard, or if it's a chain link privacy fence. I too had chickens for many, many years, and even some with clipped and some without. Even the ones with clipped wings were able to at least get a little bit of height, where I think you'll be concerned about the chickens getting into neighbors' yards with dogs, cats, roadways, that kind of thing. So I would strongly at least consider that before we allow them to run freely on a person's property.
Okay.
My question that I have is in regards to like the nuisance of it, as far as the noise, the odor, the unsanitary situations. How is those going to be monitored, and how are we going to police that?
It would be on a complaint basis, so if a neighbor was experiencing what they thought was a nuisance, they would contact the city, and we would investigate to determine first whether the nuisance existed, and then from there are a variety of avenues that the city can take for enforcement. One being a citation being issued, and another authorized by Chapter 6 being the abatement of the nuisance, which in this case I think could be a number of different types of abatement, possibly up to and including taking the chickens. Now, not to make it, that probably made it sound very simple and easy. I don't want to give the impression that anytime, in my experience, anytime a nuisance is odor related, it is not easy. Collecting of evidence in the form of a smell is not the easiest thing.
Right.
So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just, you know,
I
it's
mean,
over.
it's also gonna be discretionary as well. I'm assuming there's some discretion that goes involved with that. I mean, there's gonna be
Absolutely.
certain levels of unsanitary, certain levels of odor, certain situations, or is it just gonna be judgmental? When
Well-
it comes down to that, or whoever's the officer that inspects it that day gets to decide whether it's cleanly or not.
I think we would take a number of things into account, including testimony from the neighbors, because I think weather could, of course, dictate. We would take the testimony that we have of the neighbors, of course, what the officer observes while they're there,
Okay.
and take all of that into account before making an ultimate judgment. But yes, you're right, there would be some discretion needed under those circumstances.
Thank you.
I can't find it on here, but I thought I'd read it where they have to kind of register them with the city if they're going to have them. Is that right?
No, that is not in there.
Maybe I was reading the pig part.
Probably the pig.
Okay.
I think in the previous
Previous one?
ordinance, years and years ago, you had to have a permit because we had to check to make sure that they had a coop and that it was in the right
Yeah.
location.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something we want to consider. I guess we just go on if we're going on a complaint basis, it's a complaint basis for the whole
Okay.
thing.
I just wanted to make sure, because I know people are going to ask, and if we needed that, I wanted to make sure I could
I
tell
think we
them.
had like a $10 fee, and we would check it kind of like a rental inspection. We would just go by and see that they had it, and
Yeah. Okay.
We could add that. I considered that and did not recommend it. I think if the volume of them or number of nuisance complaints that we got rose to a level where permitting became valuable, I would recommend that. But of course, if council desires to put in a permit regime, we can certainly do that. But that wasn't part of the staff recommendation. No. So no, that is not. It may have been in the previous one, but it's not in this text here.
And Darlene, maybe you can help me with this, because I don't know anything about owning chickens. One of my friends had some, and that's about the extent of my knowledge. But I would kind of assume that most people who have them, regardless of the ordinance, would probably want them to roam free in their backyard. So I feel like that's probably,
Ticks and chiggers and bugs and.
yeah. So I feel like we probably should just figure out how to work that in.
Yeah, because if you keep them in a very small area, you're gonna have a problem probably with odor and things like that. And that's why
Yeah.
tractors are good, because you can move them. But chickens need to have that range to be able to move around and stuff. How would you like to be kept in a 6 by 8 foot pen? 6 of you.
Would it be valid to say that there has to be, the yard has to be fenced if you want to have chickens?
Well, that's an option you can put in too, because keep them involved.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't think
sorry, Ms. Graham, could you speak a little closer to the mic? We can't.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I mean, that kind of goes into what I was thinking, is how far do we take this? Because if there's not a fenced-in backyard, then they're going to go everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus be at risk.
Mhm.
So it's kind of one or the other, as far as either keep them in a coop or, either way, you have to have a chicken coop, I would assume, correct?
I think so.
They don't just, I
If
guess
I
they
could-
can sleep in a tree, but they're not going to just sleep on the ground.
We
Seems
could,
to be got some questions related to the
Yes.
currently proposed ordinance. So my recommendation would be similar to what we did with the tractor trailer, that we have a subcommittee, and we let a couple of council members, led by Ms. Graham.
It's all Darlene.
To figure out what everything is so that we can, have everything kind of in place before we move forward. Otherwise,
That's
we're
a
going
good
to
idea.
sit here all day and we'll go back and forth on stuff and come back with, a proposed ordinance that answers some of these questions that have been brought up,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this, you can do so at this time.
Thanks. It's really wet, so you gotta be careful here.
I appreciate it. Hi, I'm Liz Massengale, and I'm up here tonight on behalf of Rosedale Ranch, and we have chickens. And I actually wasn't planning on talking tonight, but I was asked to, so my only concerns are, one, that even a chicken with clipped wings can jump a 6 to 8 foot fence. Also, they produce One chicken can produce enough manure in a month to make 1 cubic yard of compost. The other concern I have comes from some of my local Missouri homesteader sites in which a common problem is the fact that you have chicken who are prey and you have dogs who are predator. And they are going to act on their instincts, the prey to do as they wish, the predator to seek it out. So a problem that I find with that is in a residential area, having dogs who it's their instinct to go after a prey animal then will become an enemy. Maybe you have an owner who's responsible, maybe you don't. And then do you have an issue with someone trying to shoot someone's dog? That is a common theme with chickens and dogs. Another issue that concerns me in this is the fact that the strain that it could possibly put on the city. I'm not sure, like I said, I wasn't as prepared to speak about this. I was here for another reason, and the police department, because the chickens will roam. They will go to someone's newly set mulch. They will dig it completely up. The chickens on my ranch are very beneficial. However, I am constantly having to chase them down and bring them back to the ranch because they spread out. Also, even though you're restricting the hens, you have an issue. I don't know if you've heard a hen lay eggs. They don't need a rooster to lay eggs, which is a common misconception. It is quite loud, and they will find wherever they see fit to lay an egg. So maybe your neighbor doesn't appreciate laying eggs in their yard. The other thing is chickens can carry diseases. So without any sort of responsibility to the owners, whether it be for their health or the clipping of their wings, which a lot of people think they can just go on YouTube and watch a video and clip a chicken's wings, it's problematic. It's very problematic. And as an animal lover and an advocate myself, I feel like we're doing the chickens a disservice, predatory animals that we take in residential homes, and domesticate like cats and dogs. And I can just see it become extremely problematic when you blend all of them together. Also, I think that if you are gonna do this, you need to definitely require that there be some sort, if you're gonna have a chicken run, that it be enclosed on top, because that'll get rid of your issue with them flying out. And also that you require the responsibility of the owner as far as veterinary services or some sort of health maintenance, whatever that looks like to you guys. And lastly, chickens can run 9 miles an hour, even if their wings aren't clipped. I don't know if you've timed yourself, but it's quite fast to try to catch them. So on that note, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thanks,
She actually brought up one of the concerns I had with predatory issues, not just for dogs and cats, but if you live towards the outer parts of town, coyotes.
I have fox and coyotes
and
in my
foxes,
backyard, yep.
That brings them even more into the residential. That'd be another concern I would have with it.
We will leave the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak, you can do so at this time. And we will close the public hearing. So, revoice my recommendation, if everyone is okay with that. Would anyone else like to volunteer?
I think I heard Amy and Sean.
At least Sean.
They both.
At least Sean.
Isn't that right? Welcome.
Welcome. Come on. Can't just be Darlene. Then that doesn't make it a subcommittee.
I have no problem with it. I'm probably more opposed than in favor, but we can always be swayed.
That'd be good then.
Then you can, yep, that's a good voice to have. Anybody else want to volunteer?
He said that he's probably more opposed than in favor, but that could be a good thing to have
Anyone else? Amy?
I don't really want to volunteer.
Okay. Somebody lives in a nice subdivision that doesn't allow chickens to have their voice spoken.
I'll help.
Okay. So we'll have a subcommittee chaired by Ms. Graham.
Darlene,
Uh-huh.
Sean,
With Sean and Mr. Giddens.
Mr. Giddens.
Is Should we make a motion to table
Well,
this until they come back?
What we'll do is, what I would recommend is we'll need to draft a resolution to form the committee and refer this item to them. So when this comes up for second reading at the next meeting, we can just take up that, we can rearrange the agenda or constitute the agenda to where this appears first. And if council adopts that resolution, formulating the committee, establishing its membership, appointing Councilmember Graham chair, and referring this bill to them and giving them a timeline on when they need to report back to council, that'll take it off the agenda and it'll take care of it all in one item.
Let's not take that to mean that you have to wait until that time. You can go ahead, if you want to have a meeting, and Drew can publicize that. People who are interested in chickens can come and voice their opinions in a less formal method, so that you can kind of figure out what the best plan for everyone is. All right? Did I close the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. And we will move on to the next one, 2021-045.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-045, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with the Nixa Area Chamber of Commerce regarding a public art program utilizing city electric boxes and amending the 2021 annual budget to fund said program.
Wow.
Mayor, Council, as we discussed during the last council meeting, the Nixa Arts Council has come up with a extremely unique idea and a way to actually showcase one-of-a-kind art. And that idea is actually by wrapping some of our city-owned electrical boxes with unique art. So we have presented the agreement for your consideration tonight that is between the City of Nixa and the Nixa Area Chamber of Commerce that would then allow the Nixa Arts Council to submit art through the chamber to the city. Through that agreement. The city would then have final approval on that art, and if the city would approve that art, the city would then be responsible for turning that artwork into a wrap and ultimately wrapping that electrical box. As we discussed with council, I am recommending a budget amendment where the city would actually pay for that wrap and the installation of that wrap, and some additional funds to replace those wraps in the case of vandalism, or if we wanted to switch that art out sometime this year. So tonight, staff is recommending council consider moving forward with the agreement with the Nixa Area Chamber of Commerce, as well for a budget amendment in the amount of $6,000 to kick off this program. And I'll just mention that, as discussed last time, we're going to start this program with about 5 boxes that we've identified on North Main Street. All those boxes will be located within a commercial area and will be readily seen from Main Street. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you very much. We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak this item, you can do so at this time.
I just want to make it, sorry, I won't touch the board. And I won't take my mask off. My job, you know. I know, you did a good job on it too. Just a reminder, this was a partnership, this was a vision that we had originally, like a mayor's committee, that turned into what we thought might be a city committee that eventually went to, do we do a standalone to the chamber, and the chamber is the one who's actually doing it. However, it's a subcommittee that we partner with the Nixa Community Foundation. So it's kind of cool how this is all coming together. This is one of many projects that we're beginning to work on. But the Nixa Arts Council is beginning to really flourish, and it's kind of to the point where I've been able to finally, my original vision was to get the right leadership in place. And I would like to call up Liz Massengale to speak as well as in the open forum tonight, as she kind of gives you the vision of not only this project being the launch project of the Nixa Arts Council, but kind of her other vision as she is our chair now for the Nixa Arts Council. So please welcome Liz Massengale back.
Keep a level of decorum, please.
Thank you. Just for you. You're so awesome. Hello again. So I just found out a few minutes ago I was talking about this as well, so I apologize. I'm not very prepared. I just recently became the chair of the Nixa Arts Council. It's something I feel very passionately about because I tell people there's 4 things I love in my life. I love God, I love my husband, who's the greatest man I've ever known. I love my children and grandchildren, and I love Nixa, Missouri. I've lived in 18 different places, and I can honestly tell you this is one of the greatest communities ever. And saying that, I'd like to say that I think we have an opportunity here to improve upon what we already have. I'm going to go ahead and throw some statistics at you since even though they're not my thing, I realize they are probably yours. So I use this Oregon as kind of my example for tonight. Like I said, I kind of pulled this up on the fly. So in the state of Oregon, more than 400 nonprofit arts organizations around the state contributed to $100 million in direct spending and more than $262 million in overall impact to the state's economy. I realize that that's statewide, but even if you broke that down citywide, I think it's still impressive. So Oregon's nonprofit arts sector grew by nearly 19% over the past 3 years and attracted more than 5.6 million people, making it a vibrant industry and major contributor to the cultural life of the state. So street box art is where we're wanting to get started. Obviously, you have to have a starting point. So why street box art? So street box art enhances communities through public art programs. It brings beauty to unexpected places, such as public infrastructure and utility boxes. It creates vibrant environments that contribute to the cultural identity of a region. They beautify urban streetscapes, foster civic pride, which I think we need now more than ever, discourage vandalism, increase pedestrian traffic, and encourage cultural tourism. All things I think the city of Nixa can benefit from. According to results, 2/3 of American adult travelers say they included cultural and arts, or likewise, on a trip of 50 miles or more one way in the past year. That equates to $92.7 million in travel expenses. So very impressive. So I said all that to say that I feel like that there's a lot of opportunities here. We are spearheading several different ideas with our Nixa Art Council. We're trying to garner community support and excitement engagement. The Art Box project is just step one on a multi-stepped, multi-year goal for us. And I'd like to end with a quote, and that is, "The sign of a great state or a great city is the strength of its cultural life." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massengale. We will leave open the public hearing. If anyone else would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time.
Mayor, just a quick note, we have some complaints of the people who are watching this stream that are not able to hear all the council members very well. So please, each of you make a very conscious effort to speak into the microphones. Thank you.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I would just tell you guys, if none of you have gone to one of the Arts Council meetings or a couple of them, you should definitely go. There's a lot of exciting things that I think they're gonna accomplish over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. I think it would have been a lot easier for them to hit the ground running had COVID not happened. But there's some pretty cool things that have been discussed that are gonna happen in the near future that I'm pretty excited about. So you guys should definitely attend at least one of the meetings just to kind of check it out.
All right, there you go.
First Wednesdays at 4.
There you go.
No outcries from the audience, please. And any further discussion? All right, move on to the next item. 2021-046, I'm gonna say.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-046, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute on behalf of the city a memorandum of understanding with Nixa Public Schools regarding the shared use of certain baseball fields.
Good evening. I know we've had different discussions over the last several months regarding the use of our use of school baseball fields. If you guys do recall, and I know we've got a couple new council members, but we do have 2 baseball fields that the city purchased and built on school property with the agreement. It was more of a handshake agreement that we had use of those fields for practices and games during the summer times to fulfill our program needs. Over this last year or so, the school system has begun doing some competitive sport programs, one in which is baseball, and is needing use of more fields such as the field that we have at Century. And so we've been in a long-term discussion with them on how we can share that use and that type of thing. And ultimately what it came down to is they decided to redo the Summit field and offer us Summit and High Point for use of our program so that they could take over and use the Century field. It is something that we've looked at. It's in good enough shape for our programs, and so now the school system is proposing that we enter into a memorandum of understanding with them for use of those two fields and just kind of get things into a little bit more of a formal setting, something in writing that we all have the opportunity to review annually, and then kind of work that out as we go through that. And so tonight is this memorandum of understanding for us to work through and enter into that, just to get things a little bit more binding and have something in writing on how we're handling those field uses. Any questions for me?
I didn't go through the whole thing, but does it exclude us from using the Century one?
It doesn't necessarily exclude it, but it does say that we'll move over to Summit and High Point. And so, yeah, I mean, exclusion, no, but it is the understanding that we would use those two fields instead of the Century field.
And you said these fields were owned by the city, though?
Purchased by the city.
They're
They're not
purchased by-
owned, they are on school property, and so technically the schools own the fields.
We invested the money
We
to
invested
build
the
the
money to
field.
build
They
them.
let us use
Okay.
use it on their land.
All right.
So.
We
It was
built on-
it was
we-
kind of a win-win. We had use of them for practices and games and stuff during the summer and out of school hours, and they also have use of them then for school programming and recesses and things like that.
Sure.
I mean, will this make it easier for you from a management standpoint since they're next to each other?
Honestly, yeah, probably just a little bit. It hasn't been a big deal I mean, we've had these fields for many years, and so it hasn't been a problem that way. But it does put everybody kind of in the same location. So porta potties and things like that, yeah, we won't have to have as many of those. So it'll save a little bit of money.
Gotcha.
And there's no time limit other than just it'll remain in effect until terminated by any one of the parties, is how it reads?
That is correct. That is correct. But we will review it annually, myself, the city, and the school district, to make sure everything, and see what tweaks might need to be made over time. Obviously, it's a new agreement, so we wanted to leave that ability to make those adjustments as needed.
Any other questions? Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Matt. We will open a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All right, we'll move on to item 2021-047.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-047, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept a 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant in the amount of $9,065, which includes a matching requirement.
Mayor, Council, annually, we have an opportunity to apply for a Bulletproof Vest Grant through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. When we apply for this grant, we typically ask for the total amount that we anticipate spending for the year, with an expectation that we would get 50% of those costs reimbursed back to us. This year, for 2021 fiscal year, we're asking for $9,065, and we anticipate a reimbursement of $4,532.50. Tonight, I'll need your permission to move forward with that request, and permission to apply and accept the grant if given. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much, Chief. We will open up public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to the Bulletproof Vest item, you can at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to our second reading. Second reading, Bill 2021-035.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2021-035, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa reestablishing the membership of the city's Board of Adjustment and appointing a new member.
Two new members, but I don't know if that matters.
I'm sorry?
It's two new members, but. Oh, okay. Oh, so who was doing that? Oh,
Good evening.
Do you want to do that before or after?
It's up to council on that. I'm not sure what Mr. Tyson's presentation is going to cover,
Oh.
but
Let him say his thing and then we'll amend it after that. Okay.
We need to reestablish the Board of Adjustment.
Why don't you explain to us what the Board of Adjustment does?
Sure. So, it's an excellent question, actually. The Board of Adjustment, I think, is a very important board that I think we need to be using. It's one of those things where you don't want to be having too many variance cases, but if you're not having any, then you might want to take a look also. So it's, the way zoning codes work is they deal with a lot of complex issues of life pertaining to physical development, and the code doesn't always fit every individual place and situation very well, and so what you can end up with is zoning codes that actually cause harm to people if you force them to comply with them as they are written. And so what most states do in order to try to deal with those situations where if the city just does its normal job and enforces the code, they will actually be causing somebody harm, is they create a quasi-judicial body that's separate from, it's appointed separate from the city council, who can act in a quasi-judicial capacity to basically say, okay, so that we don't cause harm to you, we're going to basically adjust the law just very slightly in order to make sure that you're not harmed by this particular zoning code. And so the body, that's quite a bit of power to make an actual adjustment to the law. They can't legislate, they can only make very minimal adjustments in order to help people, and the decisions they make are final, so the council can't undo that except by changing the law completely. Those decisions are appealed to the circuit court rather than appealed to the city council. So it's a very important body. Needs to be very deliberate people on there, because a lot of times the cases are very difficult, as they should be, and because you're literally going to basically change the law for one particular case, and so that's a very important thing. So that's what they do. The state statutes require that be at least 5 members on there, and that they have their terms staggered. And so previously had a Board of Adjustments. This is basically going to reestablish that board, but this time get the staggering correct so that we're matching with the state statutes, and at the same time, ideally appointing 2 members to fill 2 vacancies. Ultimately, and so there is a substitute bill that's presented that would require a motion of council in order. The original bill just had the appointment of 1 new member. That's now changed, and so there's a need to appoint 2 members, and that's what the substitute bill does.
Well,
Any questions?
how often does the Board of Adjustments meet? Is it just a as-needed basis, or?
Whenever there's an application, so somebody has to apply for a variance like you would apply for a rezone. They can also, so Board of Adjustments doesn't just do variances, they also hear appeals of administrative decisions. So I make an interpretation of the zoning code that somebody disagrees with that particular application. Their recourse is to say, hey, I think Garrett's wrong. I read the code differently. I want the Board of Adjustment to hear this out and ultimately decide on. So I want an appeal on this particular administrative decision. So they do both of those things. In my experience, like I said, it's good that they meet rarely, but not good that they never meet, because in my experience, that you run into problems where you need an adjustment. That should be happening, unless you just have the perfect zoning code. Which I can tell you we don't. Once a year, I think, would be like normal, maybe a couple times a year. If we were having 1 variance a month, I would say, hey, you got to lock Nick and I in a room somewhere so we can rewrite the zoning code, because we got a problem. So infrequently.
Okay.
We don't believe that in the time anyone can remember, it has not been used. I don't think, Travis, you know the last time the Board of Adjustment was used in Nixa? Okay. So we haven't used it that frequently in the
And
past.
Mayor, Council, just to repeat that for the ones online, Travis stated it was 2005, 2006.
Any other questions? Okay.
Well, I move to amend City Council Bill 2021-035 by substituting said bill with Substitute Council Bill 2021-035.
The original bill had Ryan Keating, and he's been appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board, so we replaced him with Mr. Larson. And so we have Mr. Dingers, Mr. Russell, and Ms. Whitehill, who've been longtime board members and prior council members. Mr. Larson, who was in the recent election, and Mr. LaRose, who's another longtime Nixa resident and construction person. So any questions on any of that? Okay. So a little bit of public hearing. Anyone like to speak to this item? You can.
We need a
Oh,
second.
we need a second, sorry.
First.
Got it first,
by
I'll
Mr.
second.
Peterson.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we have the amended ordinance. A motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
Yes.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call,
I'm
please.
sorry, we just second.
Oh, Ms. Graham was second.
Mayor, are you planning on having an additional public hearing on this?
Oh, yes, I'm
Consistent
sorry.
with, yeah.
So we'll open a public hearing on this ordinance at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Any motion to approve the amended ordinance?
So made.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orr.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the second reading bill 2021-041.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2021-041, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa accepting the proposal of Hogan's Incorporated for the Water Tower Number 5 painting project and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract for said project.
Mayor and council, passage of this bill authorizes the city administrator, as Ms. Robbins said, to enter the agreement with Hogan's in the amount of $40,693 for a complete repainting of Tower Number 5, which is the tower at the high school. This is within our budget, and it's also one of the items in the contract that was of particular interest is that it would be done by August 1st, prior to the football season, since it's right there at the football stadium. So those have been accomplished in that agreement. During the last meeting, council expressed a concern regarding the logo selected to be painted on the tower. It was staff's intent to begin a program of implementing a consistent branding on the towers, as we discussed in the strategic plan under Fun and Unique Places. Actually, action plan number 5. Thank you for that, Drew, because I couldn't remember the actual action plan. But and one of the questions that was asked was, would there be a cost for a change to change that logo to something else, since we've already put it out to bid? Though we don't have a direct answer of how much that would be, I don't anticipate it. Quite honestly, I don't really anticipate it to be anything. If we stay within just a couple of colors and it's basically about the same size. They don't actually manually paint those anymore. It's more like a decal. And so I don't see there being a cost associated with a change. It's staff, what we did was we used, because of the discussions we had during the strategic plan, we were already doing the Tower Number 8, which you see down on Norton Road, and so we were kind of staying with that theme. However, we've got one side of it we were going to use with the school district to put their custom eagle logo on. We have 2 towers that we do that with. So I'm ready to answer any questions that you may have regarding the logo, if you have any additional questions. In any case, we do recommend passage of the bill. We would like to get it buttoned up tonight because we're getting closer to that time where they're going to need that window to get that done by August 1st.
I think in meeting with, or speaking with members of the strategic planning committee, that wasn't that maybe we took their desire and misinterpreted it in some reason. You were on the were you part of this group or?
Well, I didn't really have any input directly into that, but to be honest, I feel like the intent was probably to have something a little bit more interesting.
Right.
Yeah, and that's fine. What I remember was they wanted us to standardize is basically the just that I was coming from. And since we already had the one, that's kind of where staff was. We had this one that we just did. They wanted us to standardize, and we were already doing that tower. And so to me, that meant, well, if we're going to standardize, let's just stay with this standard logo. So that's where staff came from.
I think standardizing, but maybe not exactly the same on each one, or not all with the water logo. You know, if we standardized on just the Nixa logos, we have 6 logos or whatever. We could do each one of those. We could do a police one over here. We could do, you know, we could standardize on that, or we could standardize on, you know, we could standardize. There's a lot of ways to standardize without having the exact same logo on every water tower. I think everyone agrees that the blue logo does not necessarily extend the thing we want to extend. It doesn't seem Nixa. It doesn't look like anything else in town. Doesn't match up. I mean, it identifies the water department, but you're kind of required to buy. You're required to buy water from us, so we don't really need to advertise that, right?
Yeah. From staff's opinion, that is the reason we branded the Nixa utilities to begin with, and so that's why we stuck with that. So, however, we're open to whatever council's desire is.
They might be able to have the electric one on one, and the police one on the one over here by the police station, and the one, I don't know. But I don't think that was the original.
Well, I remember the discussion that I was involved in that committee, and the discussion was, no, they all look different. Let's make them all look more standardized. Right. That was the part I remember. Now, it was not voted on, you are correct, because it's turned over to staff to come up with the action steps to make those desires happen. So it's an actual voted on plan, but the actual piece to standardize what those logos look like was more for staff. Am I just saying that right, Drew? He's our strategic plan guru. So.
I mean, I don't want to speak about intent, as I was a facilitator of that process, but my understanding in the way that it was written was that the desire was, and I remember some of the discussion with some of the citizens that brought that up specifically during that process, was wanting to see consistent branding across our water towers so that all the water towers looked more similar, so that we would not have kind of a hodgepodge or of
now we have
various logos across. That's what
now we have some
currently
that just say Nixa, some that have certain logos. One has the chamber logo.
Right.
We have all kinds of random things, which is very understandable.
And so one of the things that the other parts of the street plan was for us to go through a rebranding process, and one of the intents and one of the possible outcomes of going through rebranding, which recently Mr. Lyles has given me the go-ahead to start into the process of revisiting our branding and looking at that this year. And that's been my intent to do that this year. That, again, that's a part of the strategic plan as well, for us to kind of relook at that for multiple purposes. And one of the possible outcomes there is we could actually refresh our branding, refresh our logos, things like that. There could be some updates that could come out of that this year. And then from that point forward, then whatever we lock in at that point, and that would result in a process likely where we would present a proposed brand strategy and a brand style guide to council for your review, approval, and adoption. At that point, we would start to implement that plan. So it could be that later this year, you guys would approve some updates to our branding, and then we would want to update and roll that out across all water towers, among other things that might also be updated or impacted by that process. It's too early for me to say what might be impacted in that process, but that may change some things for what our logos will look like. So for consistency, if you're wanting to have consistent logos across water towers, it would be my advice, personally, from the communications perspective, that we would stick with the Nixa Utilities water logo, which is an adopted formal logo, which is not as likely to be updated because it's got a very broad, kind of very bold font. You can actually bring this up in this image, Evan. We have some images that Travis took today just to kind of compare. Travis Cossey had taken these today at some of the water towers. You can see the difference in the readability at a distance of the Nixa Utilities water logo versus the current City of Nixa logo. And then if you scroll down on that page, we have one of our older towers that has just a plain Nixa typed on it.
It's actually the back of 5.
And so what we were wanting so what we would kind of probably look at some point or during that branding process is looking to tighten up our branding, we may evolve or kind of update that Nixa City logo. And so if that's if that were to possibly change, then we could still paint the current city logo that we have now on this tower that we're going to repaint. But that would cause it to be the last tower to be updated, probably about 6 years from now. Is that right, Doug? If we're on a 6-year plan to cycle through all the towers?
That's approximately correct, yes.
So the current tower, so something that would look like the one on the right there would be staying up for about 6 years before it would be the last one to be updated. Whereas if we went with the Nixa Utilities water logo, which is intended to indicate the water utility, and certainly the water towers are part of the water utility. So if that were to be on that tower, then it would maybe stick out a little bit less over the next 6 years until we actually got through the full cycle and got everything updated to the same updated Nixa City logo, which I would believe, because of the way that we have a Nixa red kind of anchored in our branding, that may be something that would continue through that revisiting of our branding. And then at the end of 6 years, you'd be looking at all towers being updated to that, whatever our updated logo might be. If we decide to update our logo, we're speaking in possibilities here, but if we were to refresh things, then it would take us about 6 years to get that applied to everything as we roll that out over time, if that makes sense.
We'll do our best to understand what the strategic planning committee was looking for. We have to make a choice on this so that we can get done by football season, so we will make some choice and move on from there. And then if we come up with some branding in the future, we will change it in the future.
Is the logo only on one side of the water towers?
No, ma'am, it's on two, but in this particular case, the utility logo, or what we've slated as the utility logo, would be on the backside. The actual school emblem, like you see on the 50-yard line, is actually the one that's going to face the stadium and face the school.
So we could put the utility one on every single one of them on a backside or one that's not really visible, and put some other thing on the front side, right? Like the eagle side on one and...
Conceptually, yes, you could, absolutely. That's something that could happen.
We got another year before we have to figure that out, but we have just tonight before we have to figure this out. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. We'll open up the public hearing. Mr. Russell? Yeah. There is a public hearing on this. There was. There's now 2 public hearings.
I'm Chris Russell. I didn't realize we had a public hearing. I thought we just had it last week. I didn't pay attention. Okay, we have an opportunity with the biggest piece of real estate that this town has. And I was sitting in those meetings, and I remember some of the strategic council meetings, and we were talking about something unique, something different. I mean, I was just looking at some of the pictures of what other cities have done with their water towers, and it's like the love notes. Cindy, remember the seminar we went to? We don't have any love notes. We're going to do with the Project Power Box at the beginning, and that's great. But even if it's taking something above and beyond our assets, we don't need to brand a monopoly that we have, which is our water department and our city utilities. I get it. They're awesome and amazing. We have enough information that goes out about those departments, and I'm thankful for Doug and everybody that they have. But man, what an opportunity. Even, who cares about whether we have our Nixa logo on it or whatever? What if we had something unique or different? Or like in, the downtown one, we had the downtown district logo, and we had Home and Nixa Sucker Day since 1957. I mean, this is what towns do to give back to their community in the love notes. And that's the thing that I would love us to see us do, is come up with a campaign that's consistent like that, whether it's a partnership. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I know they cost money, but he's right. They're vinyl stickers. You can make a logo change tomorrow. I mean, it's that simple. Whether it's a logo, or maybe we do just concede that since it is on the Nixa school grounds, we just give them both sides. Does it really matter? But home of the Nixa Eagles, right? Or something, Eagle Pride, or something like that that's fun and unique. So I'm just going to challenge you as you guys move forward with this branding idea. I get it. Like our favorite water tower is Matt's. Love having the parks logo on that thing, right? We should have had a dog park logo down here on at least one side on this new one. We're going to spend all this money someday to get a dog park. How about the biggest possible billboard that says home of the Nixa Dog Park right there next to it? And I mean, I appreciate the utility department at a high level, but I appreciate love notes for our community even more. And you guys have an opportunity to do something about that with our biggest branding options. And I come to find out, the Nixa Chamber through Sharon Whitehill, she raised the funds to put the chamber logo on the other one. If we need to do projects like that and come up with something unique through the Nixa Arts Council or whatever that looks like, I'm game, let's do it. But let's not just put some boring thing. Who's been to Cuba, Missouri? What's the funniest thing you see on the left-hand side when you pull into town?
Hot and cold.
Hot and cold, right? Where's our uniqueness, right? Come on, let's be Nixa. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. We will keep the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak, you can do so at this time.
Good evening, Carrie Wilson, Nixa, Missouri. I concur with the gentleman. This is my second meeting that I've ever been to, and the last one was 2 weeks ago when this was brought up. And I just felt the need to also speak out against the, with no disrespect intended, the blue is no good. We need a lot more red, and also in adding with the utility boxes, with what they're wanting to do with that is awesome. This just does not go together with that. And the last thing I'd like to say is probably recommend Ms. Massengale back there, maybe recommend her consultation with the design or something, because she's already been recommended a couple times tonight. So maybe get with her on an awesome design or something. But I just wanted to promote the current logo, I guess, that we have now, or just more red. And I don't consider the eagle emblem just for the schools. I consider it for our town logo anyway. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. And we'll leave open the public hearing one more round. And we'll close the public hearing. Okay, so I don't think we have enough time to redesign something else or to come up with something. I think Mr. Russell had a good idea. We could just do double eagles. We could put logo eagles on both sides of it if we wanted to do that. We could put the Nixa logo, which would then match one of the existing ones, so it kind of goes back to the standardization idea. We have one, and then it gives us a year to figure out what our branding is and what our plan is. Like Mr. Russell said, at that point, we decided to change the whole thing and paint a huge baseball field on it or whatever else comes up at that point, then we have the ability to do that. It's just a cost question at that point. So, show of hands who would like a Nixa Schools Eagle or who would like a Nixa City of logo. Schools Eagle? Anybody? One?
For the one at the football field?
For the football field?
Oh, for sure. I think the Eagle's probably the
Yeah, I
most.
think.
Well, on the opposite side.
Yeah.
On the opposite side?
Well, you can
Oh.
even
Do you have
put
that
font saying
picture
home
of
the Eagles or
what the
something.
tower looks, of that tower now? I think it was on the bottom of that list. Yeah, so the one at the bottom is the one it is now, and it just says Nixa on that side. It has a painted eagle on the other side, so we're gonna replace that with the actual school logo. So on this side, we could put either the City of Nixa logo, or we could put another school's eagle.
I like City of Nixa. They need to know
Yeah.
where the city.
I do too.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're all in agreement to do the City of Nixa logo, and then we'll figure out what our consistent, what consistent means, and, you know, we could have something, I think we can have something that's consistently interesting.
So in the branding process, that would be part of the discussion, would be, what do we want to do with water towers? What do we want to do with our trucks? Do we want to wrap our vehicles with something unique? All the possibilities would be on the table during the branding exercise.
Okay.
And we'd be thinking about all those things and what are the possibilities, and all that would get discussed and thought through during that process.
Okay. I think
Great
that's very
marketing
good.
pieces.
Okay. All right, so where were we? So we closed public hearing
Yep.
and need a motion
Yes.
to approve the ordinance.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
And we'll move on to the last one, 2021-042.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2021-042, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa rezoning approximately .18 acres of property generally located at 303 North Main Street from an R1 to an NC zoning district.
Good evening. The Christian County Ambulance District currently has a facility on North Main Street located at 301 North Main Street. They have plans to expand that facility, and in the process of doing so, they have acquired the small lot just immediately north of their current facility in order to have enough land area to implement their expansion plans. So in order to make the zoning of that new lot the same as their current lot, which is neighborhood commercial, they've applied for this rezone, which will take it from the R1 single family. It's currently a vacant lot. It used to have a single family home on it. Take it from the R1 single family zoning district into the neighborhood commercial zoning district. City staff recommends the approval of this rezone. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on this issue, and they also voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezone.
Any questions? Thank you. And we'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this, you can do so at this time. Although I don't think there's probably any need to. We will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made. Second.
Roll call, please.
Darling Graham.
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
Justin Orff.
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat.
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
We'll move on to our resolution, Resolution 2021-042.
Resolution number 2021-042, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the issuance of a special event permit for Nixa Sucker Days.
Evening. The city's municipal code requires that any special events permits that are going to involve the sale or distribution or consumption of alcohol on public property, or that special events that are going to be multi-day events, first receive explicit approval from the city council. So the resolution that's set before you tonight will authorize both of those things for the annual Nixa Sucker Day, as well as kind of just generally approve the special event as a whole. I think in your packet includes a variety of documents and other information about the event. And if Mr. Russell's still here, I'm sure he can answer specific questions you may have about the event itself.
Any questions on the permit? Thank you very much. We will open up public hearing. Do you want to come tell us stuff right now? I don't think so. I think we're good. We will leave the public hearing open to anyone else besides Mr. Russell. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? As the only person to ever vote no on Sucker Day, I'm going to keep that. Very specific reasoning, but motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to Resolution 2021-043.
Resolution number 2021-043, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing a 6-month extension of the requirement to construct the public improvements for the Auburn Heights subdivision.
Thank you. Auburn Heights is a major residential subdivision here in the city of Nixa. The way the city's subdivision regulations operate is that first you get your preliminary plat approved by the city council, which authorizes you to proceed to develop that subdivision according to the layout that you've shown to the city council. And then typically the process is you go and you build all of that infrastructure, and then when you're done, you file a final plat, and then all of the lots in your subdivision legally exist, and then you can proceed to market and sell those lots, and people can pull building permits, et cetera. An alternative to that, to kind of speed up that marketing process, which I do think is a good thing, is that you can provide the city with a financial security for the entire value of what it would cost to install all of that public infrastructure plus 10%. You put that, give that to the city in a form of a security. It can be a bond or a letter of credit. In this case, it was a letter of credit. the city holds on to that while you're doing your construction. That enables you to go ahead and file and record your final plat so you can proceed to market and sell your lots in advance of having, all of your infrastructure built. The Auburn Heights subdivision took that route. Their final plat has already been accepted and filed of record, and so those lots already exist. The financial security is only good for 1 year. They've had some difficulty with materials, labor, and some other challenges. They're near the finish line. It's not that they've just been, moving too slowly or anything like that. They're close, but they do need some additional time to finish the public infrastructure. The city has the option to go ahead and cash that in and do the work themselves. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that would be an efficient use of the city's resources at this point, knowing that they're making progress and they're nearly there. So this will authorize an additional 6 months for them to complete that public infrastructure, which I talked to one of our construction inspectors today. They didn't have any particular concerns with that, and obviously the developer believes that that's more than ample time to complete the infrastructure and get it done the normal way.
Any questions?
So if they don't meet the 6-month time frame, then we can do as you proposed?
We would probably reconsider, and that would be a conversation I think we would want maybe Doug to speak to, because obviously it would be his department would be the one actually going through all of those motions. So I think the question at that point would be, why was the 6 months that we gave you not enough? And if there's a reasonable explanation, my recommendation would probably be an additional extension. But if it's because they've skipped town or something, which I think is low likelihood in this case, this is the local developer or local bank that's involved. But at that point, I think we would just reconsider.
We have surety in place at this point that if it wouldn't be our cost, we could complete the improvements without.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you very much. We'll open up the public hearing. If you'd like to speak to this item, you can at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. Motion to approve?
So made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our discussion items. First one is the bringing back of I think I discussed at the last meeting or the meeting before that, regarding the use of unrestricted cash balances. I think Jennifer, we're going kind of long, so I think she's happy to give us a presentation on what that is, but I think in my discussion with her, what we've done is we ended up spending a lot of the money that we had as a surplus last year in the budget this year already for capital improvement projects. And so probably at this point, it's best just to leave the budget as is. I think we came up, there's $300 and something thousand that would be a surplus that we could use for something else, but we may need to use that for the police firing range or other projects that we already have on the map. So I would like to withdraw my request to specifically define the use of those funds as we have in past years, and we'll come back and look at that at the end of this year. No one has any, and we don't talk about that when we move on to the next thing. Okay, move on to the council retreat and council liaison assignments.
Mayor and council, I provided some background information on the past retreats that we've had since 2017. We've had different options. We've had a 2-day retreat. We've had a 1-day retreat. We've stayed local, and then we've also gone out of town. I'd just like to get some dates this evening from you that might work for a possible council retreat, and what you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to go out of town, if you're wanting to do a 2-day retreat or a 1-day retreat. I just need some input from you, what you're wanting to do this year. And then also do some council liaison assignments, if you may.
So we weren't able to do a retreat last year.
Correct.
And so we have, like I said, we have 2 new members this year. It may be useful to have a 2-day retreat. I don't know would everyone be available? Would you be available? Would you be available for 2 days? Okay. So I think to schedule a 2-day retreat would be good. Do you have any?
Are you wanting to go local, or are you wanting to go out of town? In the past, we've stayed local a couple of times. We went to Springfield to the Hotel Van de Voort and had a facilitator come in and had a really good 2-day retreat where some of the ideas that came out of that retreat, one of them was a think tank, which has been very, very instrumental in some great ideas from our employees. Also, we went to the Keeter Center and had an economic development roundtable, and it was also a very good retreat. And then we've had the White River Conference Center 2 years ago, where we had a strategic planning exercise. Last year, of course, it was canceled.
Mayor, Council, just for clarification, especially those new members and those online, I know we use the word retreat, but that is a workshop. It's a working workshop for 2 days. I just wanted to make that clarified for those that may be new.
Not a vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. It'll be a highly packed agenda.
Yeah.
Yes,
We try to make it somewhat interesting, right? Okay.
we try.
I would think Branson wouldn't be too bad because you're far enough to remain out of pocket, but close enough to get back if something happened.
Yeah, I think anybody that has done those types of engagements in business or something else is, if you're at your own desk or in your own town, it's a lot easier to get sidetracked onto something else, so I would, yep. I think one thing we talked about was maybe the Hilton at the Landing, see if they have a conference space. I know they have conference space available. I've done conferences there in the past. So that might be something, and then that opens up lots of options. Sometimes, in the past, we were able to go to a Springfield Cardinals game. We were able to do other kind of team building type exercises. So there's lots of interesting things down there. Throw some axes at city staff. I am just looking at Matt specifically.
To you.
Matt can come clean that.
But everybody's in
There's
agreement with that.
lots of different
Dates.
resorts.
Does
Do you
anybody
have
any
dates?
that
Yeah, do you have
that do not
dates
work?
available? What, like,
Should we do a doodle poll or something?
Doodle poll? That might be a good idea.
Let's do
you
that.
want to do a doodle poll?
Do a doodle poll, and we'll,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I think in the past, like Thursday, Fridays work best, and maybe do like every Thursday, Friday in June and July, and see what we come up with or something.
And then, Mayor, Council, I'll just recommend that we try to schedule that as quickly as we can. We do have some pressing issues that we need to discuss at the retreat.
Sure. All right,
So June and July
June
dates?
and July?
Or do you
I don't know,
want?
May's,
May.
May's getting kind of short.
May is
Um,
short, and
Mother's Day and Sucker Day and
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day.
Yeah, May is
Probably
too
going to be
close.
hard to pick but yeah, I think June, do June and July, and hopefully whichever one's the closest, we'll go with that.
okay,
Then we can go.
I'll send out a doodle poll.
All right, thanks, Cindy.
And then, council liaison assignments this year?
Liaison assignments. So we can do
Yes.
them this week, or we can do them next week. We can introduce what they are this week and then do them next meeting, or we can do them right now, whatever you want to do.
We can introduce them.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
What do you want?
We can introduce them. That'll be fine.
Just introduce them? Okay. So, concept, I think this is probably the 10th or 11th year that we've done council assignments. Been very successful for us. Mr. Perryman before was the Public Works Liaison. As part of that, he was able to be appointed to, give me some acronym, Doug?
Most recently, he was on the American Public Power Association Policymakers Council.
So it allows you to get a more in-depth feel for certain departments, and we try to change those up every year so that you can get a different feel. And so I think that's been very good to give people a little more in-depth information as to how the different departments work. And then a couple times a year, we ask a council member to do a presentation. We've had a couple of those recently. I think both of you have seen those. So what we'll do is we go by seniority. So it'd be Mr. Peterson, Ms. Graham, Mr. Orff, Mr. Giddens, and then we'll go ladies first, and you can be last. And so next week, if you have your kind of ideas, or you can campaign amongst your own members and see if you can get the thing you want, right?
Good luck.
All right, any questions on that? Okay, all right. Let's see, anything else? Councilor If you have any topics you would like to include, please send those to Cindy and myself.
Please.
We'll work on an agenda for the workshop.
Yes.
We'll call it a workshop from now on. Like that. Okay? All right. That's the last thing on my list. Anything else from staff?
Yeah, Mayor, just a couple things real quick. One, council did ask me to check on the budget for Sucker Day this year, so I did check with Ms. Evans, and we do have $8,000 budgeted for Sucker Day this year. Now, last year, we had $8,000 budgeted as well, which we already did pay to the chamber, which that will roll over, portion of that will roll over this year. But Mr. Russell has asked for council to consider some additional funds because the event is much larger this year than it has been prior years. And this being the very first event after COVID and really our first opportunity to come out as a community would be an opportunity to really make this a big thing for our community. So my recommendation, if council would like to know that, would be to maybe pitch in an additional $5,000 this year to go on top of what we did last year, since we don't give some to Sucker Day last year. So, and that would allow us $3,000 to stay in the Community Betterment Fund for other opportunities.
I think we've budgeted it. I think that's fine. I mean, we can, I don't think the normal things that are in the Sucker Day, like the waiving of the fee and the waiving of police charges and electric charges and all the other stuff we normally waive for Sucker Day, that wasn't in this resolution, was it? No.
It was not.
Okay.
It was not.
So we'll also have that cost as well, but that cost is lessened because Mr. Russell got a donation of police time, so we do have less police requirement for this year than we have in the past. So we all okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we're all okay with that?
We'll move forward with that. And then I think, Ms. Evans, could you have an opportunity to explain the use tax issue, if you don't mind?
I don't know if you had the chance to look at the sales and use tax report, but the use tax appears as if it's in bad shape because we only received $263.44 this month. We typically receive in this $40,000 to $60,000 range. But that can be explained by one of the taxpayers overpaid in our March receipts, which you'll see were $117,000, but they overpaid by $60,000, so then they took it back out. So on the second sheet I showed, if you'll scroll down, if it would have been correct, there would have been the numbers. March would have been 57,000, and April would have been 59, instead of 117 and 263. Bottom line is the same, but that's just the brief explanation of why that happened.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Yep, one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Just as a reminder, if anyone council's interested in the MML elected officials training that is coming up in June, I think it's scheduled for June 10th and 11th. So especially the new council members, if it's something you're interested in, if you get a hold of Cindy, she can get you the details on that.
All right, anything else from staff or from council?
One other thing about portraits. So at the next
Yes.
council meeting, do you want to take fresh portraits outside for the new council members? This week, I will try to get your contact information. I'll get with each of you after this meeting to get your contact information that you want to publicize to the public, for them to be able to reach you with comments and questions. I'll update that on the website this week, but I'll wait to get a more professional portrait of you the next council meeting, or do you want to wait for longer than that to get portraits of the new council?
No, I think we're fine. Next meeting would be great.
Okay.
Do we want to look at, nothing against Drew, do we want to look at getting a professional photographer to do them? We've done that in the past. I thought they looked, nothing against Drew, but they looked better.
Yeah, I'm not a professional photographer by training. I try to do the best I
Yep,
can,
you do a
but
great
I'm not.
job.
But there are certainly better skilled photographers out there, so I'm not opposed to us hiring a photographer to do that.
We could look at, yeah, we could look into that. I think that'd be great.
Okay. And so for the next meeting, so the May 10th,
Yep.
May 10th.
and so uniform black suits, white or gray shirts, red ties, and Amy, red, black, and white, or gray.
Something that looks Nixa-y, all right?
Yeah.
Look, Nixa E. Okay, looks Nixa E.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Anything else?
I just wanted to give a quick report from the drug take back event that we had on Saturday. We actually collected 408 pounds this year, which is beyond anything that we've done in the past. So had a great turnout and spent some quality time with Forgy. So
Always fun.
So it was worth it, huh?
oh yeah.
Anything else from council? Motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.